Everyone noticed him the moment he walked into the wedding, but not for the right reasons. His clothes were simple, his shoes were dusty, and in a place filled with elegance, wealth, and status, he stood out like he didn't belong. So people stared, they whispered, some even laughed quietly. To them, he was just a poor guest who somehow slipped into an event meant for important people. No one welcomed him properly. No one respected him. And slowly, he became invisible. But what they didn't know was that the man they ignored was watching everything. Every look, every whisper, every moment of silent judgment. Then suddenly, his name was called. Out of all the guests, the poor man was invited to the stage. Confusion spread. Laughter turned into silence, and when he finally spoke, the entire wedding froze. Because the man they treated like he didn't matter, was the one who had the power to change their entire future. In the lively village of Makand, weddings were more than celebrations, they were statements. A family's honor, wealth, and reputation were all displayed in one grand event. And on this particular day, the entire village had gathered for what many were calling the wedding of the year. The bride, Nia Okafor, came from one of the most respected families in Makand. Her father owned vast lands, and her name carried weight wherever it was spoken. The groom, Emeka Dubé, was equally admired, young, successful, and already known for expanding his family's business beyond the village. Everything about the wedding was designed to impress. Colorful fabrics stretched across the open space, tables were filled with rich food, and music echoed through the air as guests arrived in their finest clothes. Laughter, pride, and celebration filled every corner. But not everyone arrived in luxury. At the far edge of the gathering, a man walked slowly toward the event. His clothes were simple, almost worn. His shoes carried dust from a long journey. He didn't carry gifts wrapped in shiny paper, nor did he move with the confidence of the other guests. He looked out of place. People noticed immediately. Who invited him? One woman whispered, adjusting her expensive jewelry. He must be lost, another replied. A group of young men laughed quietly. Even the guard should have stopped him. The man didn't react. His name was Jabari, and despite the whispers, he continued walking calmly into the wedding. Near the entrance, two attendants exchanged glances as Jabari approached. Invitation? One asked bluntly. Jabari reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple card. The attendant looked at it briefly, confused. It wasn't decorated like the others. It didn't carry the same prestige. Still, after a moment of hesitation, they stepped aside. You can go in, he said, though his tone carried doubt. Jabari nodded and entered. Inside, the difference between him and everyone else became even more obvious. Men wore tailored suits. Women shimmered in bright, elegant attire. Conversations flowed easily among people who clearly belonged to the same world. Jabari walked quietly among them, unnoticed by some, ignored by most, judged by many. At one table, a group of guests openly stared. Look at his clothes, one man said under his breath. He doesn't belong here. Another smirked. Maybe he came for free food. They laughed. Jabari heard them, but he didn't respond. Instead, he found a quiet seat at the edge of the gathering, away from the center of attention. From there, he observed everything. The decorations, the people, the energy. His expression remained calm, thoughtful, as if he wasn't bothered at all. Meanwhile, the bride, Nia, moved gracefully among her guests, greeting people with a practiced smile. She was aware of everything happening at her wedding, every detail mattered. So it didn't take long for her to notice him. Who is that? She asked one of her cousins quietly. Her cousin followed her gaze and shrugged. No idea. Probably someone from the groom's side. Nia frowned slightly. He didn't look like someone who belonged to either side. Still, she said nothing. Because today was not a day for disruption. Time passed, and the ceremony began. The music softened, guests took their seats, and all attention shifted to the couple. It was a beautiful moment, vows exchanged, smiles shared, applause filling the air. But even during the ceremony, some eyes still drifted toward Jabari, not with curiosity, but with judgment. After the vows, the celebration grew louder. Food was served, music returned, people laughed, danced, and enjoyed the moment. Yet Jabari remained where he was, quiet, composed, almost invisible. A server approached him briefly, then hesitated. Are you, with the bride's family? He asked. No, Jabari replied calmly. The groom's? Jabari shook his head. The server looked confused. Then, Jabari simply smiled faintly. I'm here because I was invited. The answer didn't satisfy him, but he left anyway. As the evening continued, the whispers grew. Some guests became more open with their comments. This is embarrassing, one woman said. Events like this should have standards. Exactly, another agreed. People like him ruin the image. Not far away, Emeka, the groom, overheard parts of the conversation. His expression shifted slightly. Who are they talking about? He asked. Someone pointed subtly toward Jabari. Emeka looked. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition? Maybe, but it passed quickly. Leave it, he said quietly. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the wedding, the host stepped forward to make an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, he said with a smile, we have a special moment prepared for this evening. The crowd quieted. We would like to invite a very important guest to the stage. People leaned forward with interest. Important guest, who could it be? The host looked down at his list, then spoke a name. Jabari. Silence. Confusion spread instantly. Who? That man? No way. All eyes turned toward the quiet corner, toward the man no one had respected. Jabari slowly stood up, calm, unbothered, and began walking toward the stage. The same man they had ignored was now the center of attention, and whatever was about to happen next was going to change everything. As Jabari's name echoed across the wedding hall, confusion spread like a ripple through the crowd. People leaned toward each other, whispering urgently. Did he just say Jabari? That man sitting over there? This must be some kind of mistake. But it wasn't a mistake, because Jabari was already walking, step by step, calm, steady, unaffected by the dozens of eyes now fixed on him. The same people who had ignored him moments ago were now watching him with curiosity, and a hint of unease. Nia, the bride, felt her chest tighten slightly. This isn't part of the program, she whispered to her cousin. Her cousin shook her head. No, I've never heard his name before. Nia's eyes followed Jabari as he moved closer to the stage. Something didn't feel right. Or maybe, something felt too right, as if this moment had been waiting to happen. Emeka, the groom, stood still, but this time, he didn't look confused. He looked thoughtful, focused, as if he knew something others didn't. Jabari reached the steps of the stage. For a brief second, he paused, not out of hesitation, but as if taking in the moment. Then he stepped up. The host greeted him with a respectful nod, very different from the hesitant tone used at the entrance earlier. Thank you for joining us, the host said. Jabari nodded once. The microphone was handed to him. The crowd fell into a deep silence. Up close, people began to notice something they hadn't before. Yes, his clothes were simple. Yes, his appearance was modest. But his presence was not. There was a quiet confidence in the way he stood, a calm authority in the way he looked at the crowd. And suddenly, the assumptions people had made earlier didn't feel so certain anymore. Jabari looked out at the audience slowly. His gaze moved from table to table, from face to face. Some people looked away. Others held his gaze, unsure of what to expect. Then he spoke. Today, he began calmly, is a day of celebration. His voice was steady, clear, stronger than anyone expected. A day where two families come together, where promises are made, and where people show who they truly are. A few guests exchanged glances. His words felt deeper than a simple congratulation. I arrived here earlier, Jabari continued, like every other guest. A pause. But not everyone saw me the same way. The air shifted, slightly, uncomfortably, because now, people understood. He had noticed everything. A man at one of the tables shifted in his seat. The woman who had whispered earlier lowered her gaze. Even the attendants near the entrance stood still, suddenly aware of their actions. Jabari's expression remained calm. I was welcomed by some, he said. A brief glance toward a server who had at least spoken politely to him. And judged by others. Silence deepened. Because no one could deny it. Nia felt her heartbeat quicken. She remembered noticing him, ignoring him, choosing not to question his presence. And now, she didn't know why that memory felt so heavy. Jabari turned slightly. His eyes met Emeka's. For a moment, they shared a look, not of strangers, but of understanding. And that's when something clicked in the minds of a few people watching closely. Wait, someone whispered. How does he know the groom? Jabari continued. This wedding, he said slowly, is not just important for this family. Another pause. It is important for something much bigger. The confusion returned. But now it carried tension with it. Behind the stage, one of the well-dressed coordinators stepped forward, holding a folder. He waited respectfully, not interrupting, but ready. Jabari noticed him, then looked back at the crowd. For the past few months, he said, I have been working with several communities, observing, learning, and deciding where to invest resources that can change lives. A murmur spread. Investment, resources, what was he talking about? Emeka finally stepped forward slightly. His voice calm but clear. Let him finish. That single sentence silenced the crowd again, because now it was clear. This wasn't random. Jabari reached into his pocket. Not for money, not for anything flashy, but for something simple. A folded document. He opened it carefully. This village, he said, was chosen as a potential center for a major development project. Gasps spread instantly. A project that includes schools, clean water systems, and business opportunities for families. People leaned forward. Hope, shock, confusion, all mixed together. But, Jabari added quietly, the word changed everything. The excitement paused, because everyone felt it. There was a condition. This project, he continued, is not given based on land or wealth alone. His eyes moved across the crowd again. It is given based on values. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Now people understood. This wasn't just a speech. This was a judgment. Jabari closed the document slowly. And today, he said, I saw something important. The entire wedding held its breath. Because whatever he had seen, was about to be revealed. The silence in the wedding hall felt heavier than anything before it. No music, no whispers, just dozens of eyes fixed on Jabari, waiting, hoping, fearing what he would say next. Jabari stood still for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle into the crowd. His calm expression hadn't changed, but now, people saw it differently. It was no longer the calm of a quiet guest. It was the calm of someone in control, someone who had been watching all along. You welcomed me today, he said slowly, not because you knew me. A pause, but because you assumed I didn't matter. The words landed sharply, not loud, but powerful, because they were true. A woman at the front lowered her gaze. One of the young men who had laughed earlier shifted uncomfortably. The attendants near the entrance stood frozen. Every person who had judged him now felt it. That quiet sting of realization. Jabari continued. I walked into this celebration like any other guest, he said. But the way I was treated depended on how I looked, not who I am. The truth spread through the room like a wave. No one could deny it, because everyone had seen it. Some had even taken part in it. Nia felt her chest tighten. Her mind replayed the moment she had noticed him earlier. The way she dismissed him without a second thought. The way she chose not to question anything. Because, to her, he wasn't important. Jabari's gaze moved across the crowd once more. I was offered a seat far from the center, he said. Given looks instead of respect. And judged, before I even spoke a word. His voice remained steady, but every sentence carried weight. Then, he stepped slightly forward. And everything about his presence shifted. Not dramatically, but undeniably. My name is Jabari Adeyemi, he said clearly. A ripple moved through the crowd. Some people recognized the name instantly. Their eyes widened, their posture changed. Because that name was not ordinary. I am the founder of the development program that has been evaluating villages across this region, he continued. Gasps spread. Clear. Unmistakable. This project, he said, holding up the document again, has the power to transform communities, education, clean water, economic support. He paused, then added quietly, but only for those who understand the value of people, beyond appearance. The room felt smaller now, because everyone realized, this wasn't just about opportunity. It was about judgment. Their judgment. Emeka stepped forward, standing beside Jabari. Now it made sense. Why he hadn't reacted earlier. Why he seemed aware. He wasn't surprised. He was waiting. He came here at my request, Emeka said calmly. The crowd turned to him in shock. I asked him to attend, not as a guest of honor, he continued, but as an ordinary man. The truth hit even harder. This had been intentional. A test. A quiet, simple test. And most of them had failed. Murmurs rose again, but this time they were different. Not curious. Not judgmental. Ashamed. Jabari raised his hand slightly. The room fell silent again. I saw kindness, he said. A small relief moved through the crowd. But I also saw something else. His gaze hardened just slightly. Pride. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Unavoidable. Nia stepped forward slowly. Her voice soft, uncertain. We didn't know who you were, she said. It wasn't an excuse, just the truth. Jabari looked at her. Calm, direct. That is exactly the point, he replied. Silence. Because in that moment, everyone understood. Respect should not depend on identity. Kindness should not depend on status. And dignity should not depend on appearance. Jabari lowered the document slightly. This village has potential, he said. Hope flickered again. But potential must be matched with values. The tension returned. Because now, everything depended on what came next. He looked around one final time. At the people. At the faces now filled with regret. At the realization settling deeply into the room. Then he spoke. The project will move forward. Relief spread instantly. Breaths released. Hope returned. But, he added. And everything stopped again. It will not be led by those who judge too quickly. The words were firm, clear, final. Instead, Jabari turned toward a quiet figure standing near the side. A server. The same one who had at least spoken to him with basic respect. You, he said, gesturing gently. The young man froze in shock. Me? Jabari nodded. You treated me like a person, not a position. The entire hall turned to look at him. This project, Jabari continued, needs leadership that understands humility. He stepped closer. And that begins with simple respect. The message was clear. Loud. Unforgettable. Nia lowered her gaze. The celebration she had been part of just moments ago now felt different. Heavier. Meaningful. Because this wasn't just about one man being ignored. It was about an entire mindset being exposed. Jabari stepped back from the center. His role complete. His message delivered. Before leaving the stage, he said one final thing. Never measure a person by what you see first. A pause. Because sometimes, the one you overlook, is the one holding your future. Silence followed. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was full of understanding. And as the music slowly returned, and the wedding continued, the people of Makand were no longer celebrating the same way. Because they had learned something deeper than joy. Respect is not given to the powerful. It reveals who you truly are.